Welcome everyone to another episode of the Dardish show. I am so excited for our guest today, Mr. Bergner, the German ambassador.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much, first of all, for being here. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to be here. I saw some of the episodes of the Dardish show, of the past episodes, and I quite like the format. In Germany, we have a word that's very similar to Dardish, which is plaudern. And there are formats in German sort of TV that used to be for a cigarette, when that was still allowed, for a cigarette with someone or for a cup of coffee with someone. I think this is very similar.
Yes,
So
that's
I
the whole
like the
point,
format.
is to have a conversation, organic and real. Welcome to the Dardish show, a place to sit back, relax, and enjoy a good conversation. So, can we just get started? Can you just tell people about yourself and when you came to Kuwait? I realized that you came to Kuwait in 2016.
2.5 years ago. I should say that by training I'm a lawyer, and I did business administration before joining the Foreign Service in 1989. So that was, of course, a very interesting year in German history. You remember the fall of the wall, or should remember the younger the younger audience. In 1989 the wall fell in November. So that was how I started into a diplomatic career. I then worked for a year in the diplomatic academy as a tutor for the next group of trainees. And my first post abroad, I will perhaps give you a small sequence, or you have perhaps some of the posts might sort of elicit questions for you. My first post abroad was in London in the embassy, and that is a bit the idea. There was a large embassy, industrialized country. My next posting was in Panama from 1904 till 1996. Small embassy. I was number 2. Deputy Chief of Mission, as it is called, in Latin America. Then I worked a few years in the Human Resources Department of the Foreign Office. Then I was in Nigeria, Abuja, Nigeria. A very interesting experience. We had an embassy office there that I sort of transferred into the embassy then later on. And then I was back. I was deputy head of our diplomatic academy. I was involved in recruitment and training of young diplomats. Which was a very interesting experience, because it makes you reflect a little bit on what are you doing, what is the essence of your work that you try to convey to young colleagues. Then I was 2 years, unfortunately I have to say only 2 years, in Madrid, head of the political department, then returned for 5 years as the head of the Southern European Division. From 2008 to 2013, that was a time of Euro crisis, where lots of the countries I was charged with or responsible for, such as Greece, Italy, Spain, etc., were hitting enormous economic problems, and it was a very interesting time. Then, before coming here, I served 3 years in Washington, D.C. in our embassy as a funny title called minister, that is kind of a second tier DCM for the embassy for culture and communication. So I did the press department there. I was supervising cultural department. I had a lot to do with university cooperation, etc. And I think I benefited from that job, because it opened my mind to public relations. Is perhaps one of the reasons why I'm here with my colleague, and also for the importance of cultural work, because I see this interview as an opportunity to portray, to give your audience and you yourself a little bit of a view of Germany, work on the image of Germany abroad. Because this is increasingly what embassies have to do. We do obviously quite a lot in cooperation with the government, but we increasingly also work with what we call the civil society. We are not working in a vacuum. We're not working in a sterile situation, but we work in a society and we will not try to impose our values or so, but we want to try to promote our values and explain what Germany is about, what modern Germany looks like, what the German society is about, etc. So
I love that. We're not imposed our values, we're here to promote our values.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. So can you share with us a little bit about the values that you'd like to share, and a little bit about...
Well, I mean, since this is a long format, I think I can sort of, for me it's ideal, my wife would say at least, you know. she says, you know, she's always worried that I'm boring people, but you will tell me, you stop me. Because this is a question to answer, I need to go a little bit into the history of Germany. Mm-hmm. So, you know, of course, that Germany was losing 2 world wars in the last century. Mm-hmm. The last one was a total disaster, really. I mean, Germany was really in ashes. It was totally destroyed. For example, Berlin, a city that I know very well, I lived in for several years, was destroyed. 96% of the houses were destroyed. But it was not only a physical destruction of let's say, estates and of wealth, but also a moral bankruptcy, if you will. After what Germany had brought over the Jewish and other minorities in Germany, the war that we had started, that was extremely cruel. I think we had to have a real new start. And with the help of the Allies, in particular the Americans, the British, the French, you know that then Germany was divided into East and West Germany and the Federal Republic. In the West, the Americans were responsible, and British and French. They helped us to develop a new constitution, a constitution that is based really on the values of human rights, freedom of speech, and also internationally to be involved in international organizations. We strongly believe in multilateralism, mm-hmm. and we strongly believe that, coming back to it, that you cannot impose your will. You have to have negotiated, you have to have conversation, you have to have contact, be in contact with people and try to discuss, to understand the other side and communicate, basically. So we did that. There were several phases. One was our integration into the West, into NATO, the foundation of the European community at that time, later European Union. That was out of the belief, in particular the European Union, was out of the belief that it is, if you integrate your economies, if you integrate your societies, your policies, etc., you will lower the threshold, you will lower the possibility of wars, or you will increase the threshold for armed conflict because you're already very much integrated. In the second phase, we then transferred that into what was called Ostpolitik, politics with the Eastern Bloc, and particularly Soviet Union at that time. Where we also try to, first of all, touch on humanitarian issues, enable, for example, travels and visits, and hope by contact we can convince people of the virtue of our values. And I would say it was a slow process. It was organization that's perhaps boring, but organization like the Organization for Cooperation and Security in Europe, OSCE, was founded in 1975, and that laid the basis for certain standards in human rights, for communication, etc., that in the end, from my point of view, were the reason for the fall of the wall. Because there was so much information flowing around, people were seeing each other, etc., that the situation for the East Bloc got untenable. Frankly speaking, I wouldn't say that everything that happened afterwards. There was talk of the end of history, you know, the West and the Western values had won. I think that was too easy. I think we should have listened a little bit more to the concerns of the people that were liberated. I think many saw it like that and rejoiced of the occasion. But for example, in East and West Germany, the unification, we should have listened more to the East Germans and their concerns, because not everything was bad, you know, in their societies. And I think there would have been a lot of things that we could have learned from them in this occasion. But I think overall, coming back to your original question, we are a country that wants to listen, not to impose, want to lend a friendly hand. We have certain, let's say, advantages, economically strong country, but we want to put that at good use in view of our past history.
Wow, that's very interesting, very powerful, very interesting. And how would you say we want to listen instead of impose, connect to the youth in Germany, and how are you guys doing that?
I think, first of all, or most of all, we are a liberal country. We are a country that allows for different opinions, different ways of life. We have developed, I mean, it was not when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, for example, diversity, cultural diversity, also diversity of forms of life was not very pronounced. But it started at that time, and you remember, for example, things also like concern for the environment, the Green Party was founded, etc. So things slowly changed and developed. That's perhaps something I would say to some of your listeners who are desperate for change here. This doesn't happen overnight. It is a thing that the society also has to convey, or the society has to carry the reforms and be convinced that these reforms are going into the right directions. And so I think young people find a few things that are sort of going for them. First of all, very good education and training. I think that is one of strengths, also economic strength, is that there is good training on all levels. You have sort of course, good academic training, good universities, and that may be perhaps a point where I can sort of express my interest in having more Kuwaiti students studying in Germany, because right now the number is so small I will not even mention it.
Wow.
Because it's in the single digits. And I would love, I think, having more Kuwaitis coming to Germany, living there for some time, getting to know the experience would be a good thing on the long run, would create a basis of people who understand Germany and Europe better. So training, education is an important thing, but also on not only university level, but we also have a lot of training for technicians, etc. And that is something we value a lot. We have high respect for academic training, but we have also a big respect for people who work with their hands, for production, etc. And I would say we have some of the most qualified workers in the world, which is really the backbone of our industrial success.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to education and the future of education and jobs, a lot of jobs are being replaced by technology and computers, so it's pretty tricky to be able to have that balance of where the direction of education should be focused on for the long-term vision. So I really like... Yeah, so I'd like to ask you as a person, how does it feel being a German ambassador for 20 plus years, 25 plus years?
No, to be honest, this is the first time that I'm ambassador. And frankly, that is, I would say, the culmination, of course, of a diplomatic career is being ambassador. I always considered it sounds a bit tacky, an honor to represent my country. But it's the bizarre situation that you love your country and you feel it has to give something to the world, and you want to present it by not living in Germany. So
Wow.
I've stayed half of my life outside of Germany, although I like it quite a lot and like to live there and spend holidays there, etc. But working as an ambassador, having the responsibility, and that was something I learned very quickly. You have sort of two functions. One is, of course, I'm the representative of my state. I represent not the Foreign Office of Germany, I represent the entirety of Germany. If you will, my real boss is not the foreign minister, but the president of Germany.
Of course, yes.
And but that translates also within the embassy. I have now sort of full responsibility within the embassy, and the two roles are, on one hand, I'm the representative of a country, and I have to say I'm being treated very well here in Kuwait and very respectfully. But on the other hand, I have to manage a small business, if you will. The embassy is, we have 14 German staff and around 20 locally employed here in Kuwait, so 34 people. There's also management tasks to make sure that on one hand the ambience in the embassy is good, everyone is happy, because my strong belief is if people are happy in what they're doing, they do better work and the output is better. But on the other hand, also that the embassy produces what we are supposed to produce, which is I use, if people ask me what is an embassy doing actually, I'm always saying we are the eyes, ears, and the mouth of Germany abroad, of our country abroad, and that means we have to report back home. So we have clients sitting in our ministry or in several ministries in Germany who want information on Kuwait, political situation, current political situation, economic opportunities for companies, things like that. We are the mouth as well, so we represent Germany here in Kuwait. We try to do cultural projects. We try to occasionally pronounce our opinion on certain issues, try to cooperate with the Kuwaiti government on, let's say, international initiatives. Right now, Germany and Kuwait are in the Security Council together in this year, which has increased cooperation, of course. We do. We discuss other things than we used before. I mean, all of a sudden, for example, the Democratic Republic of Congo and the elections there are important, which was never an issue here in Kuwait so before that. So we now cooperate in a whole range of issues, which makes life for me very interesting actually. And it's anyway, with the neighborhood, Kuwait is a politically extremely interesting post, so I'm very happy here.
Well, welcome to Kuwait, and I love the fact that you love Kuwait. That's amazing. I want to ask you a couple of questions that might be a bit personal, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Traveling from staying in countries for 2 years on average, from Washington to Spain, 3 years, and having a family as an ambassador or as a representative of your country, and being a leader at the same time, because they were mentioning how amazing of a leader you are and at work. And how is that a skill you developed? Is that something that came with time?
The changes, I think that is really a big question. I think the younger you are, the more you feel, it's more of an opportunity than a challenge. And I would say, frankly speaking, the foreign service and diplomacy is not for everyone. So in my case, for example, I really appreciate being able to get to know different countries in a way a tourist never would, because we stay there in a country for 3 years. We have contacts with, let's say, the whole society, and in my case, from the emir, from His Highness the Emir, to the cleaners and taxi drivers, etc. So you get to know the whole society, and that was in previous postings as well. And I have a positive attitude towards people and towards other cultures in general, so I find this extremely enriching. But it's of course a challenge for you yourself, because on one hand, also I find enriching that in the first phases, we are not specializing. Yeah? I'm not working only on political issues or economic issues or cultural issues, but you have to be what we call a generalist. You have to work on different issues. And for my character, of my style of work, this is extremely convenient. But other people might find that challenging and hard actually to accept. But I have to say also, the older I get, the more I cherish stability, etc. Let's say this kind of adventure, to see it as an adventure, is getting a little bit lower. And then you have concerns like I didn't have before. You know, my father died 3-4 years ago. My mother still lives and is fortunately living in a city where my sister lives, so she looks after her. But so all of a sudden, you know, the care of your parents gets an issue. Our son is out of the house. He is studying in Berlin. He's 25. So, you know, to look after him, be far away from him is more difficult. So I would say the challenge from my personal perspective is getting a little bit larger within the career. It's compensated by more interesting work and let's say more comprehensive, more responsibility that you have at work. But I always knew also that the one question is how I personally deal with it. And perhaps one observation I always give to young colleagues, I was asked, how do you deal with it, you know? I said, usually if I'm being transferred, it's not a big problem, yeah, because I leave and I will be very sorry on the day I leave Kuwait, and I know I will have tears in my eyes, honestly. Wow. But there will be a new challenge, you know, there will be a new job and that will absorb so much of my energy that I won't have too much time for nostalgia. But but one of the things that I also realized that is harder is to see others leave. That was something I never realized, because almost everyone has the same 3 years rhythm. Wow. So sometimes you tend to concentrate on those who arrived at the same time, because you know they will be around for the next 2 or 3 years, and you form friendships, etc. And then perhaps, but you have formed a friendship. I can say here, for example, I had a very good friendship with one ambassador who left a year ago. We still are writing WhatsApp messages, etc. And it was hard for me to see him go, because he was someone I confided in and had a real friendship with, which is not happening all the time. So one thing is how you deal yourself with the transfers. The other is how you react to the transfers of others. And the third and most important, that was a question, how does the family react on that? And I'm very happy to have a wife who grew up she's German, but she grew up in Latin America, so she knew how it was to live abroad. And she has, from the beginning, and we were already married when I made the decision to apply for the Foreign Service. So she supported that from really, not only day one, really from second one, or it was rather sort of, she pushed me almost a little bit to give it a try. So I had no difficulties on that stage. But then when we joined, we also said, how will it be for children? And we unfortunately have only one son, but we were very aware of how that would affect him. Yeah? And we knew you have no guarantee. I see that from colleagues, you have no guarantees how children react on this. There are children who, I would say, benefit from it, from the international climate, from the possibilities to learn languages, etc. They really flourish, if you will. Some of them then decide to join the Foreign Service themselves. There are others who actually suffer from it because they find it hard to win new friends every 2 or 3 years. I think basically our son was a bit middle of the road. He is of the type, he has always had 2 or 3 very close friends very quickly, but he is not the party animal or so. Yeah, he's not sort of the center of attention. So I think he did quite well for himself, but I don't think he would want to become a diplomat himself. He enjoyed parts of the experiences, but not everything. And I think he is now really happy in Berlin. I doubt that he will leave anytime soon. Yeah.
Oh,
So, and as a parent, you have to see. I think if he would have really suffered, then there is always the option to ask for longer stays in Berlin or in other places, more than the usual 3 years. Yeah. But
Exactly,
that comes with a downside in career planning, etc. But I think that is a sacrifice you should do for your family, yeah, because they are in the end the ones who are suffering from this nomadic lifestyle.
I love the fact that you said that every time I go to a new country, no matter how long it's been, or if it's my first or fifth country, I still see it as a challenge, and I immerse myself with opportunities and some things new. Is it something that all of your colleagues have that same perspective? Is it something they train you when you get into this career?
I think, as I said, I was involved in recruitment. That is certainly a character issue that we look for in applicants, because otherwise you will not be happy.
Yes.
If you consider it as a burden, as hardship, then you will not be very happy in your job. So I will not speak for others, but I think. And you need a certain resilience, that not everything happens as you plan it. I didn't get always the posting that I wanted to, but in the end, and you have to have also a certain ability to paint things a little bit rosier than they maybe are, and concentrate on the good things that you find in a place. Let's put it that way. I mean, for example, in Kuwait, you could talk at length on the climate, and say in summer it's terrible and unbearable, and I have to go away, etc. You could also say there are 6 or 7 months where the climate here, from October till April, is actually a lot better than in Germany. I personally feel I like the warmth better than cold. And if you concentrate on that, you're a happier person, and say, okay, and the rest, there's air conditioning, and you still, there's only 2 or 3 months we cannot be outside. That is tough, no question about that, but there are ways to compensate that. I frankly speaking, for me, in my case, it's a bit quiet in that time. I do a lot more exercise and sports than I used to do in the other time when the social activities are so much more.
Oh yeah, I'm sure social activities, keeping yourself busy, taking care of your health is so important, so important.
Yeah.
And being in this career for so long, you saw the shift in technology and people that were doing this in the 80s and the 90s versus people that are doing it now with the rise of technology. How do you think it's affecting them?
I think that the density of work has increased. I mean, when I joined the Foreign Service in 1989, even a copier was not a standard issue in all the offices.
Wow.
So sometimes things were replicated in a machine that had some kind of alcohol solution in it, and copies were done this way in our training, actually. Or in the first postings I was abroad, there was, of course, no mail system available at the beginning of the 90s. That started in 93, 94. But my first post in London, we just had an internal internet. We could not communicate with the Foreign Office at that time for security reasons. So our communication was basically, even at that time, by cables, cables and phone. And so now, and my second post abroad was Panama, and I remember at that time they started introducing mail, but also then the standard form of communication, if someone was not extremely urgent or pressing, was writing written reports. So that took usually, we had one what we call a courier back to Germany once a week. So it took usually to get to the destination. I can remember very clearly, I asked for some information on trade fairs in Germany. So it took 2 weeks to get to them. And I was sort of patient. I was not worried after a month, but after 2 months I got a little bit worried and asked them, could I have an answer, because I need to inform some people here or have questions, etc. So it was really the usual thing to wait 6 to 8, 9 weeks before you get an answer. Yeah, and frankly speaking, also privately. I mean, with my family, phone calls were extremely expensive. It cost like $5 a minute or so.
Yes.
So you call on certain occasions, but you even I mean, our salaries are not bad, yeah, but you think twice if it's $5 a minute. And so I think in that respect, a lot of things have changed. Everything is quicker, the response is quicker. You can communicate directly, for example, to other ministries now, which we couldn't before. But of course, and it increases, let's say, the pressure, yeah, because of course people now get worried if they don't get an answer from you in 3 days. They worry about your health and ask, are you good? Haven't heard from you, etc. Yeah. And on the other hand, it has improved the quality of life. I think basically it was made for persons with our lifestyle, because now you can stay in contact with your family. I mean, you can do video calls, etc. You can WhatsApp, etc., and really participate in the lives of your friends, of your family, etc., in a way that was not imaginable when I joined the Foreign Service.
I bet in the 90s. I mean, now even if you tell the trainees that the new people.
I hope I don't appear to your to your generation as my son is always making fun of that. If I tell stories like that, he's saying, "Yeah, no. As a kid, you played with wooden toys," which is true.
He's not that old, guys. No, he just started when I was born in '89. I was born in '89, and he started. Yeah. It was very interesting because now you're saying that you're talking to people on WhatsApp, your friends. Versus before, you used to send letters and you can't even talk to your family. Yeah, but I wanted to, what do you like doing in your free time?
As I said, if I can, I try to exercise a little. I try to do, let's say, cultural things. And I was amazed how much you can do also here in Kuwait. There are places like galleries, for example. My feeling is that has developed in the last 5 to 10 years, a bit more. But there is a lot of things to do, and I like to explore things together with my wife. Go to museum, go to a gallery, go to a concert, or whatever. I'm personally quite interested in sort of history, in architecture. Also there, I would like to see, it's a bit too late to complain about that, but I would like to have seen more original Kuwaiti architecture being preserved. I think there was too much destroyed of the old parts of the city, but what is kept is beautiful, very impressive for me. Then also read a little bit, if I'm honest, 2 little books. I think on one hand, I always remember a friend of mine saying, I don't read papers because that is no use, I'm following news anyway. But he reads only books because he says, what he takes out of them is more longer lasting, etc. Unfortunately, I concentrate more on papers because I feel it's a part of my business also to be up to date on developments in Germany, in Europe, and to not lose touch. So I read German papers. There is a magazine, weekly magazine, Der Spiegel, which is I find very good. And what I like about that is also, it's perhaps part of my generalist approach, that it does not only cover policy or foreign policy, but all sorts, aspects of life, technical developments, cultural things. And so I read, I'm probably one of the few in the world who read that from A to Z, yeah. But it makes me feel like I stay in touch with the world, yeah.
Wow, that's very powerful. And you've been in Kuwait for 3 years now. What are things that you would like to see change in this region more?
I think, I mean, to start with what I like very much, and why my wife and I like it so much in Kuwait, is really hospitality, the openness of the people. And you can see that Kuwait has a long tradition of openness to foreigners. You have this trading tradition, this pearl fishing, trading, going out and on one hand and receiving foreigners here in Kuwait. And I think that is still tangible in the way many people act. And a generosity that is really overwhelming for European. And so my feeling is you have already, you have lots of advantages in your past, in your history. You have, from what I see, a very educated young people. What I would like to see is more responsibility by those in charge for the younger generation. Because I can see, I mean, just the demographic development of the country is a huge challenge for politicians. And I'm not so sure if they are always aware and always considering that as an important factor. But by 2030, about 65% of the population will be under 25. So jobs have to be created, healthcare, education, yes, etc. All these things, yeah. And there I feel, you know, and also the question of what are the values, what are the expectations of young people is something that has to take a more important role. And yeah, that is basically what I would wish for. And frankly, I mean, also from the demographic side, I see there will be a pressure on economic reforms. Everything that the new Kuwait vision I totally share. Diversification, getting away from the dependency on oil, strengthening of the private sector, probably reducing the public sector that is so big, and creating meaningful employment for young people. I think that is what I would wish to see.
Meaningful employment for young people. Can you just talk more about that? What do you mean when you say meaningful employment for young people?
I think Kuwaitis are not different than Germans or Europeans or Americans by that way. You look for something, I personally, I would hope for, at least, for something that is meaningful, something where you make a difference, where you see that you have some effect on that the things that are doing are having some effect. Yeah. Is a German word on that I cannot really translate. Selbstwirksamkeit. It's mean how you perceive yourself. Do you have an influence on what is happening? And I think people they aim for that. You know, your life wouldn't be meaningful if you just go to work from 8 to 4, sit there and then go home and forget what you were doing the whole day. So I think, you know, a meaningful employment is something where you feel you can realize yourself. You have an impact on maybe a small area only in a company, and that responsibility grows perhaps in the long run, but we have some impact, and where you can sort of invest yourself a little bit. And I think, you know, that would be something I wish for my son, but I would wish for every young person here in Kuwait and also in Germany. And having the liberty, the possibility actually to decide what that may be, yeah? And not being directed by someone else, but having, let's say, a certain room for maneuvering where you try yourself as well, where you can find out about your desires, your strengths, and what you really want to do.
I love that. I mean, I can completely relate to what you're saying, especially when it comes to having an impact, even if it's on a small group of people. It's very powerful. As a leader, how is that something that could be taught, or is it something that people are usually born with? Because I'm sure you know a lot of people that might not be as, not in love, but as enthusiastic about spreading Germany's values with the world. So is it something that you were always born with, or is it something that you could teach your kids to have an impact and have meaningful jobs?
Well, I mean, I would sort of distinguish between the two. I mean, my desire is to spread the, let's say, or to work on the German image abroad is one thing. But generally speaking, I would say it can be taught. I think it needs encouragement. It needs the encouragement. Frankly speaking, for example, an organization like Loyak here in Kuwait is something I admire because it creates the spaces for kids to explore themselves and find perhaps talents that they and their parents and their surroundings never thought they had in arts, in theater, in performing arts, in singing, in music, etc. So that's perhaps one part of work of Loyak, and it's part of the space that I mentioned. You know, that young people and children, young people actually need to find out what is it they want. Yeah. For others, it may be something totally different. It may be someone is perhaps a scientist, and so perhaps he needs encouragement. Actually, follow that. You know, do that, and try to go to bring the best out of you in this respect. Others, I studied law and business administration basically because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and this was the broadest possible training that allowed me, would have allowed me to go into a variety of jobs. In the end, I ended there, and frankly, I mean, to come back to your question on how that came from, is my parents always encouraged, and they are not from a rich family, they are sort of middle class, but they always encouraged my interest in going abroad, in learning foreign languages, etc. So when I was very young, they would, for example, host pen pals that I had at that time, writing letters. They would allow me to go abroad on trips to we had town twinnings with Britain, with an English city and a French city, to go on excursions with these town twinnings. And then I discovered when I was 13, 14, this is something I can relate to other people, you know, I see more the communality between a 13 and 14-year-old boy who is more interested in chasing girls and being, you know, making good impressions on them, than I saw more common than I saw differences.
Oh.
And where I said, you know, this is something I'm good at. I understand other people. They listen to me, I can listen to them, and that is perhaps something I want to do in my life. But it's this creating a space, making this possible. I'm extremely grateful to my parents, and that I would wish for all young people, you know, that their parents create these spaces and allow their children to explore themselves and find things that they might want to explore, even if it's perhaps not their personal interest. My parents wouldn't have gone into the foreign service for that matter, for example. But they encouraged me and they made it possible, actually.
Beautifully said. Creating the space for people to be able to explore. And you were able to explore that young, like 13 and 14, you realized that you're able, you're like emotionally intelligent and knowing to being
Yeah,
able to be
perhaps I was a
empathetic.
bit premature. I wish I would have been a little bit wilder in my policy, etc. But it's too late now. I was basically a good child. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you the only
Working hard
child?
at school. No, I have a sister as well.
Mhm.
But so I didn't create any problems. Yeah, so that was not in the way. It was. I wouldn't say it was a compensation that my parents allowed this, but it was never something that where they said, you know, but first of all you have to do your schoolwork and, you know, present good marks in school, etc. Good reports. That was never an issue. So that helped me to perhaps to get this liberty. But I think independent of that, parents and teachers and whoever has to do with young children. Try to create these spaces, and there's as I repeat, Loyak is, for example, a big example for me here in Kuwait, because they create this kind of spaces where young people and children can sort of explore themselves and also go abroad, do trips abroad. There are certainly a number of other organizations that I don't even know, but to support, I mean, coming back to the introduction, to support these kind of institutions is something I value very highly, and we're in good contact with those, and try to find, you know, ways of cooperation where we can sort of help them.
That's amazing. I always think about the education system and how we can somehow not change, but find a way where it will allow students to, like you said, create that space and allow them to be able to take risks and try things so they can explore what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
And Hisar has a foundation called Bariq, I think, and one of their programs is about bullying. And they try to, because they see that there are the bully and there's the victim and there's a bystander always. The bystander is the person that watches, and the bullying and the victim. And they realize that the bully is in a position of leadership. So they realize that most bullies somehow are leaders. So for them to be able to not take that position from them, but to replace it in a way where they're still leaders, but instead of using that position to harm or use it negatively, they'll use it in a positive way. So I think that approach for the education system is a very good step for at least starting to create a space of awareness for those children and empathy for them, knowing how it feels to do these things for the bystander, for the victim, and for the bully.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Yeah. It sounds like a very interesting organization as well. I would like to get in contact. And I give you, but I think also that the bystander has an important role as well in these things. And I just recently, I mean, you know about the Me Too discussion in the US, sort of harassment of actors, female actors in the US. And so there was also a big discussion, a similar discussion in Germany on this issue. And one of the, for me, most powerful statements was there is one director, name doesn't matter here, that was pretty much in the press on that for harassment of actors, you know, trying to, let's say, extort female actors, you know, for sexual favors. Otherwise, he wouldn't give them roles, and if they rejected him, he would then harass them on the set. Yeah, and he would be tough on the set, etc. So I think sexual harassment, very often the base of that is always about power. It's always about power, and the possibility to humiliate someone. And so I read a long story about the system that allowed that, yeah, because he was powerful, he was generating income for the production companies, etc. So he got away with a lot of things. And even if not many people were aware of the sexual harassment that took place in his hotel rooms, etc., but they saw the harassment that was taking place on the set when the productions were taking. the most powerful statement there was that I heard was that one actress said, so he was doing this again, I had rejected him, he was harassing me, talking me down, you know, saying I'm a bad actress, etc., just to punish me for rejecting him. And there was this cameraman who at a certain moment said, I will stop working now. He shut off the camera and said, I will leave this place, I will not work in a space where people are sort of demolished psychologically. Yeah.
Wow.
So he left, and then this director who was really, I mean, he was powerful, people were afraid of him. Yeah. He went after the camera and said, yeah, I will not do that again, etc., please come back. And this actress, she said, this was a moment that changed my life. You know, where I saw this one guy stood up for me and said, I will not accept this bullying. I think this is why I think it's of course about the leaders and how they use the power they have, but it's also about the bystanders. They have perhaps more power than they think in the situation. Yeah. And of course, you know, I mean, we have examples in international politics. It takes courage and takes guts to stand up and talk against a bully, but I think for your own psychology, you need to do that. Yeah.
That was a beautiful story. That's so powerful. Like bystanders have way more power than they think they do. Or bystanders do have a stand, and they can.
So I mean, we are talking about events 1970, so that's 40, 45 years ago. Yeah. And still she would remember this one sentence, this guy saying, I will not work in a place where people are harassed. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's something I think, because these things, especially for young children, bullying can have long-term effects, and educating them just by knowing where everyone stands, because I didn't know where I was standing until Intisar's team started explaining to me this formula or this method, and then you start asking yourself, which one am I? You know, as soon as they tell you, yes, you go back.
That's beautiful.
Which one am I? Where do I stand? That's amazing. It completely makes sense. I would like to play a game with you, if that's fine. It's simple. This is the Dardish cup mug, as you guys can see, and there's 5 questions inside. You can go inside and choose which one you'd like. You have to answer 5 of them if you'd like.
Yeah. So probably I'm not supposed to read them in case I'm...
You can read them out loud, it's fine.
What is your biggest accomplishment? I would say probably that I stayed truthful to myself, that I try not confuse position. As an ambassador, you have a certain position, you have a position of authority, of power, etc., with my personality. I think that can happen very, very easily, and if I would say my biggest accomplishment is remaining myself, which is not easy, and yeah.
How do you do that? How are you able to stay true to yourself? And
I think probably by being self-reflective, on, of course, you get a lot of flattering comments, etc. And you know, I'm happy about compliments. I'm happy as everyone if people are satisfied with my work, etc. But not allowing that to think that I'm a great person and still being critical of what I do and ask always a second time what is the motivation behind what you do. I liked, by the way, your interview with Sheikha Intisar, where she talked a little bit about the same things, you know, that you, in the end, it's the question what things do with you that is important, not the things as such.
How everything you see in your life is a reflective of what's actually is inside of you. That's very powerful.
You can sort of react in very different ways on the same situation. Persons can differ, and then also reflecting a little bit on why are you doing that, what does it do to yourself, and what is and stay true to some core beliefs. Yeah. So, for example, I cannot say that I'm, let's say, I believe in a cooperative leadership style, but then push my things through and not discuss them with the staff. You know, this will very soon backfire.
100%. 100% makes sense. Ready for the next question?
Yeah.
Let's go for it. Can you read the question so people could...
The question is, if your life was a movie, what would the title be? This reminds me of a question when I was applying for the Foreign Service. I was asked, what would you like to have on your grave?
Wow. Nice. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And I remember, I mean, I didn't really prepare something of the like, but I said, you know, he tried.
I love that. I love that.
This would not probably make it, you see, this is a complex question because, of course, I would hope if a film about my life would be made, it will be a blockbuster. And he tried, probably it would not be a title for a blockbuster.
Wow.
But, yeah, I don't know. The Many Adventures of Karlby. That's the working title.
The Many Adventures.
But that is probably one of the aspects of self-reflection. I also wouldn't think that my life would make a great movie. Just for me, it would make. I'm totally happy and satisfied, but I don't think other people would find it so interesting. What is the best advice you ever received? Frankly, it's not an advice that I've received personally, but that I feel has been useful for me in many respects. The former Pope John the 23rd, he said, he said as a Pope, yeah, don't take yourself too important. Yeah.
Don't
think of yourself as too important, and that has this humility that is something I find quite appealing. Yeah. And I remember when I was sub-director of the Diplomatic Academy, we always had, you know, a last session before they would get their reports and their diplomas, and then, you know, leave for the world. And I said that to them as well, because as a diplomat you can, as I said, you know, sometimes if you confuse your role with your personality, it can sometimes get to you. Yeah, so you feel you are an important person because you have a driver, you have access to important people, you think you can influence sort of international politics, etc. But this doesn't make you a better person. Yeah? And always have this humility, I think, is an important one. So.
Wow.
But we are recurring on this issue.
I love that. Yes, we are recurring on the issue. I love it.
So that says probably more about myself.
Yes.
So this was 2, 3, this is 4. There are lots of others, by the way, but more like truisms, like accept things as they are, try to change where you can change, try to accept the things as they are, try to change where you can change, and have the wisdom to differentiate between the two. what's the coolest thing you've ever done? It's an interesting question. Because I think I've done quite a lot of, in my career, you automatically, I mean, you know, I've been in the same ballroom as Lady Diana.
Wow.
That was her last public, I didn't dance with her. But my mother probably would say this was the coolest thing you ever did.
Wow.
That was the last public appearance of her with Prince Charles at that time.
Wow.
My first post in London. Or I think during our training we did a lot of cool things as well. We did, for example, a small documentary on our training, which was like Monty Python style, you know, totally. My then the director of the academy didn't like it at all, but it was cool actually.
Well, that's pretty cool, being in the same ballroom with Princess Diana, the last appearance. That's pretty cool, guys.
Yeah, but and, you know, press conference with Barack Obama is a big thing, and but you know, cool is not a category for me, I have to say. So probably I shouldn't really answer the question.
That's pretty cool, trust me, man. Like being around like Barack Obama and Princess Diana, that's as cool as it can be.
Yeah.
So, last question.
I thought there were more inside. It's only 5, so really you have to answer all.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So this will not pose impossible problems. If you had to choose another career, what would that be? And frankly speaking, I think it would be, I would find it hard to name one, because I think there are 2 things I would like to do, and both are similar in a way. One, and those have been alternatives right from the beginning. As I said, I studied law and business administration. So always from the beginning, an alternative to the Foreign Service would have been to join consulting. Do consulting, because I believe in a strong sort of interdisciplinary approach and in generalism, etc., in holistic approach, if you will. And so working in consulting would have been nice, but perhaps more precisely in management training. Yeah. I think on one hand, I would like to study more psychology and social behavior, etc., and put that my experiences in my career and what I may additionally learn into practice, into good use for people who have, for example, leadership challenges and need some sort of coaching, if you will. That would be alternatives. I could
Wow.
say.
I did not expect that. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay, so I'm going to ask you another question, because I'm very interested in that. So, leadership and coaching. How important is having a coach or somebody that could give you clarity, give you direction, or just, yes, clarity as a leader? Because saying that I would like to impact leaders, learning social behaviors, or maybe being a consultancy or coach, how important is having a coach as a leader?
I think the first step is acknowledging that you don't know everything. You cannot know everything. Of course, you know, if you're in a leadership position, then you, of course, feel almost obliged to give this image. I know everything. I know actually exactly the way we have to go, and not. And in a way, probably it's also important not to appear too insecure yourself. Yeah? But for the team that you have to lead. But if you have doubts, then to realize it is not absolutely necessary that you find answers to all your questions yourself. And there are lots of people who have maybe different ideas from what your first approach would be, and to look for help, for outside help, and it's not a weakness. I think that's the first change that needs to happen. That people in leadership positions usually think to search for coaching, for counseling is a weakness. And by the way, I would say that as a very strong sort of remark to, let's say, psychological problems in general, it is not a weakness to look for counseling. It can be so if you have a good coach, and that is a bit of the main question. If you have a good coach, good counseling, it can help you in so many situations. So the first thing is realizing where are the problematic areas where you perhaps feel insecure, where you need counseling. And then and then the other thing is probably not to think that there is a magic wand and you do 1 hour counseling and then everything will be solved. That this is a process where you get feedback, where you can sort of that is something who is sort of accompanying for a certain stage, for a certain, let's say, process that you're undergoing, a certain transition, transformation, change management, etc. I think these are the areas where you need that. And perhaps I was asked about lessons of life. Another very important that I learned when I was doing the recruitment, we had always psychologists in the recruitment board. I mean, they didn't have a decisive vote, but they were following us and they were counseling on us on certain candidates that would feel problematic. And I always remember one quote was, "Growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone." And that was something that is so true over all your life. You may go into difficulties, you may experience, let's say, a love that goes bad, you know, disillusionment in work, something that doesn't go back, but consider it as this is a chance for growth. If you accept it, if you own it, and then see what you can do out of it, it's a bit like Sheikh Intisar would always say, if you own that, it can make you stronger, or it will definitely make you stronger. And not to reject it and say, no, I want to get over it, I look for the next girlfriend, or I look for the next job opportunity, but also work with the disillusionment, with the deception, with the sadness with that, but try to change it into something good. Yeah? And then, and that is true for counseling in general. Not to consider a challenge as a problem or a weakness, but something that you can grow on. Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, in sports, you have the best example. It doesn't have happen. You know, you don't get stronger without muscle pains. So.
Yep, I love that one. I love that. The growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. Something that's been going through my head a lot lately. A lot. I just came back from a mastermind in Florida, and mastermind is a part of. Like a private group of entrepreneurs, and I was telling all of my friends that I was the dumbest person in the room for 3 days straight.
But that is exactly where you grow.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you so much for this beautiful, beautiful interview. I felt like I learned so much, and so glad I can share this with all the world so they can learn about your life, learn about Germany, and learn how it is.
Too much, unfortunately.
Too much, but
another session.
We'll do another one just for Germany.
I just have to do one thing.
Yes.
Because you may have wondered about this funny thing. So this is what is called a body bear. Mm-hmm. I do it for the camera. We talked about it already. The name Berlin, of the city Berlin, of the German capital, also has bear in it. Also in German, bear is also in German bear, and so it's the city symbol of Berlin. And so the body bear is actually an activity, an action, actually an art action, where white bears are being painted by different artists all around the world, and usually combine it a little bit. You will here find you one with a lot of sort of tourist attractions, starting with the, I would have to zoom on later on, with the Brandenburg Gate. There is the so-called Victory column in the on the back. I don't know.
And they're usually bigger, huh?
And they are, the original is about 2.30 meters high. There's one here in 40th floor of the Alhambra. You can see it in front of our hand.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
That is painted by a Kuwaiti artist.
Wow.
Laxmi, you may know. So that is an original Kuwaiti body bear. This is a German one.
Thank you. Thank you so
pleasure
much. Thank you so much. Guys, this is a beautiful gift. I'm going to cherish this and save this. This is going to remind me.
And as we said in the beginning, I hope that it will always give you good mood when you see it. And if your mood is excellent, you can put it this way.
This is how it's going to be today, guys.
This is how growth happens.
Wow, yes. Let's keep it like this, guys.
Well, I would like to take this occasion to tell all viewers how grateful the German community and my wife and I are for the hospitality we receive here in Kuwait. We are really happy for all the friendship we have received, the warmth. And we would encourage you to come to Germany, have a look for yourself, see what it's like. There have been already thousands and really hundreds of thousands of Kuwaitis going to Germany, but there can always be more. There's beautiful spaces, there's beautiful landscape, there are mountains in the south, there is the sea in the north, there are beautiful cities such as Munich and Berlin that you can explore here in Berlin. And so please come and visit, and most of all I would encourage young people, pass it on to your friends, go to Germany for studying. Get in contact with the embassy and follow us. Our hashtag is Germany in Kuwait. Yeah, follow us, and then you can learn a lot more about tourism to Germany, studying in Germany, and yeah.
And if they have any questions regarding tourism or studying in Germany,
if you go to that's the Instagram hashtag. If you will find our profile page, you can send us direct messages. We actually will try to answer all the questions. And perhaps one very last sort of remark, please think about your visa in time. You can always apply already now. It will be valid for at least a year, if not more. And you don't have to wait for the very last minute and second before you ask for the visa, because then it will get crowded, you will have to wait for a longer time, etc. Right now it's absolutely stress-free, so do it now if possible.
It's a very good tip, guys. A lot of people struggle with the visa. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity, and thank you for giving us some of your time. On that note, guys, take care and we'll see you soon.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Watch out now. Cause baby, I feel real good and I wish I would. Watch out now. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Watch out now. I'm ready for a good time, and I came to groove. The whole band's here and we came to move. Got a fresh haircut and 2 new shoes. We're here all night like we got nothing to lose. I'm coming out the jacket cause we're turning up the heat. I wanna see you clapping when you get up out your seat. It's time to make it happen when we hit these streets. I'm coming in hot and I can't be beat. Watch out now. Baby, watch out now. Watch out. I'm on the move, I'm going up. I'm a man on a mission with no missions, and I'm looking for love. Oh, I'm just looking for love. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Watch out now. Cause baby, I feel real good and I wish I would. Watch out now. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good, baby. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Last call for some alcohol. And don't forget to tip. The sun went down, but we still rolling. The band's still going, playing all ahead. I guess I'm now too legit to quit. I'm coming out the jacket cause we're turning up the heat. I wanna see you clapping when you get up out your seat. It's time to make it happen when we hit these streets. I'm coming in hot and I can't be beat. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Watch out. Hey, baby. I'm on the move. I'm going up. I'm a man on a mission with no missions and I'm looking for love. Oh, I'm just looking for love. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good.
Watch out now.
Hey, baby, I feel real good and I wish I would.
Watch out now.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good, baby.
Watch out now.
Everybody watch out.
Watch out now.
Everybody watch out.
Watch out now.
Watch out.